I'm Traci Austin, your host of the People Strategy Podcast. This show provides interviews with organizational leaders and ongoing coaching experiences that highlight elevating people in organizations through a people strategy roadmap. Today, my guest, Andreas Dankelmann, joins us from FifthAscent. And Andreas is an individual that has done some great integration with organizations throughout his career. He has over 20 years in executive roles. And in that time, he has played a pivotal role in growing businesses and nurturing leadership teams that thrive on trust, clear goals, and a culture of innovation. With that, Andres will be sharing with us today how he implements predictive index and the entrepreneurial operating system within organizations to really up-level their people in a way that creates business results with fulfillment in the work that they do. So join me in this next conversation. So, Andres, we've had several conversations about what has us be fulfilled in our work and the types of businesses that we love to work with. And I'm so curious, what provides you personal fulfillment when working with entrepreneurial businesses?
I think seeing them grow together, seeing how they develop as a team, and then get to the results that they set out to do, like being a part of that, helping achieving that, that just gets me out of bed every day. It just makes me happy.
And just to ensure that we have clear definition, how would you define an entrepreneurial business?
I think a business where you have obviously a business owner, you have a smallish team somewhere between 1 to 2 to 250, 300 people, and you have a idea, you have a vision in mind, and you do everything you can to make that a reality.
And so often, I know when you're working with organizations, one of the key things that comes out is people and really looking at who's driving that people rock, so to say, inside of the organization. And so, what is your experience with working with kind of that person who drew the short stick in HR?
I love that. I love how you phrase that, getting the short stick. I think we always going to need to keep in mind where whatever it is that we're doing, we are in a people business. Business gets done by people, through people, with people. Right? Sometimes we heard this, oh, I'm B2C or I'm B2B. Well, you're still interacting with people. You're still selling a service or a product to people, right? Maybe it's used by a business, but you have people interactions. Now, people rock, there isn't necessarily per se a people rock, but one of the first things we do when we implement EOS within a business is we take a very deep look into the structure of the organization. Do we have the right structure to support what we're trying to do over the next 9 to 12 months? And people and HR are always like an integral part in that. But what I often see is that, especially in small, medium sized businesses, we don't really have a strategic HR function. We have somebody, as you said, who drew this short stick and does like the basic blocking and tackling of HR, administrative HR, for, if that's an expression, right? Where we maybe take care of payroll and PTO and those kind of things. And maybe we created an HR handbook, but we didn't really spend a lot of time thinking about like, what's our people strategy, right? What's our plan for our organization in terms of people, not just tasks and things and plans that we set out to do.
I always joke the short stick in HR because so often, like, that person was kind of like voluntold that they were going to do this thing, and they really don't know what winning looks like in the role.
Right.
And so, when you're partnering with businesses, really to get that business result and doing that in a way that elevates folks inside of the organization, what are the impacts of having a short stick HR versus somebody that's really passionate about the people?
Yeah, I think the biggest impact that I see, and I can share a little story. I just ran an annual planning meeting with one of my clients, and that team is hyper focused on building teams and getting the right people in the organization, putting them in the seats where they can be really, really successful and impactful, and where they do the things they love to do. As opposed to sometimes, if we don't do that intentionally, we sometimes get into the situation where what I call random acts of hiring. Right? We have a problem and we throw a warm body at it, right? And sometimes we get lucky and sometimes we don't. And in my own experience, I certainly have put myself into a situation here and there where I didn't pay enough attention to what do I really need in that role and what does success look like, right? I just like try to solve a problem really quick because my hair was on fire. And that typically doesn't get the result that you really expect.
And I want to dig into what you said because, I think that there's a distinction between solving a problem and what success really looks like. Can
Mm,
you talk a little bit more about that?
yeah. When I say like solving a problem, right? Sometimes we need to like take a step back and really understand like what is the problem that we're really solving, right? Oftentimes we jump to a conclusion. We kind of think we understand what the problem is. We don't really spend a lot of time digging a little bit deeper. Right? It's kind of attacking the symptom rather than what the underlying issue is. Right? And if we dig a little bit deeper, we can understand that more. And then from there on out, really attack the root cause of the problem. And that'll help us and inform to define, or if we solve this well, like what does success look like and how do we measure success along the way?
And I think that there's something about what is performance, right? Like, do we all have the same performance ratings that we're really looking at? And, you heard me earlier say, Let's define what this is. Cause so often there's 72 different definitions for
Yeah.
things. And when you have that HR leader in the organization, they're typically leading kind of this definition and enrollment of what that is, which includes the behaviors of core values. It includes a definition around performance. So, as you're implementing EOS inside of organizations, what does that really look like?
Yeah, you mentioned something that I want to emphasize a little bit, like having that common language, right? And I think one of the things that we achieve with the OS is we kind of have a common language on business related things, right? Especially when it comes to performance, I think that's super important. The one thing that I think is really, really critical in this whole endeavor is like setting clear expectations, right? And then getting everybody's buy-in as to what that looks like and what execution looks like. And again, like how do we measure success along the way and what is the intended outcome?
And so one of the things that I know that you do amazingly well is you're creating almost the structure around how we're doing what we're doing, but it's all built in, the common language of EOS or the common language of predictive index. So I'm curious, how is organizational structure and operating systems a people strategy that really drives those business results?
Yeah, how does that all fit together? I mentioned earlier, like one of the first things we do when we start implementing an operating system is helping business owners and leadership teams understand how organizational structure works, doing that intentionally, and how do we define good functions and roles within those functions. And again, that ties to how success looks like at the end for that particular function and role. And tying that all together with what is the strategy that I have? What is the business result that I expect? And how do I get to this with the people that I put into the organization? Like that to me is where we link this all together.
And do you have an example or can you share a story of how you've really implemented that with a client and the success that they've seen?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that the team that I just did an annual planning session for, I've been working with them for about like 3 years or so. And they started out as a small team, handful of people, successful. Oftentimes, what I hear when people contact me is, yeah, we doing good, but feeling a little bit stuck. And they don't know exactly how to break through that next ceiling that they're hitting. And oftentimes it is because we don't have the right structure built quite yet. We're probably the owner, maybe we're a co-owner, and maybe we hired a few people helping us, but we haven't really built a solid leadership team and enabled them to take the reins and execute on the plan that we all share. And over the past 3 years, I've seen them really putting laser focus on building that team, building that group of people that can help them grow the business. And they've been killing it. They've been growing 30% year over year for years straight. And yesterday in the meeting, they're still making changes to the organization. They just made changes to the leadership team that are necessary for their next step. And I'm going to read here some of the things that they said at the end of the meeting when I asked them, how do they feel? And they said, like, really dialed in. We have the right people in the right seats. We feel like we really have for the first time, we have everybody in their role where they need them so we can achieve bigger goals even more than we have in the past.
So really achieving those goals, and I think that key part to achieving those goals is we know what winning looks like. We're performing at all cylinders because we're really focused on that goal versus on all the other things that we can get distracted with and from. So I know that you work with a number of private equity backed organizations and those that are not. So, what do you see as a key distinction in people's strategies between those with that private equity backing and those without that private equity backing?
Interesting question. So typically, and from my own experience, when we bring in a investment partner like a private equity or we venture backed, um, it changes the dynamic in a way that I have a whole different stakeholder group that are now entering the business. Right? I have a board now, I have banks, and a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes when we bring in an investment partner. So it also is kind of for many businesses, first step to accelerated growth, right? Which means that we probably need to take a close look at the organization and see, is everybody ready for that? Right? Is everybody ready for that growth and that accelerated growth that we're targeting here? And I think that is probably the biggest difference that I would see, that we just have that accelerated growth and we just need to be ready for that with our people strategy as well.
And, looking at, hey, are we ready for that accelerated growth? When you look at the entrepreneurial operating system and each of those six rocks, there's some clear things on what ready looks like, right? And so, what does ready look like within that? And from a people perspective, we're so often finding, and that's the majority of who we're working with, but we're so often finding that the leadership team isn't ready for that growth yet because they haven't truly grown as a leadership team yet, or we really haven't defined our mission, vision, values that we can really use them to make our decisions by and ensure that the folks coming in are truly aligned with where we are at as an organization. What's one challenge that you have for our listeners today based on our conversation?
I think one challenge to put out there is reflect, take a moment, look back, and really be honest with yourself about what did you do really well this year, what didn't go so well, and pick one thing that you want to improve on in the next year. And be okay with getting some help, right? We all have our challenge areas and blind spots and things that we can work on. Ask somebody close to you, there's one thing that you could do better to be a better leader, partner, teammate, whatever that might be.
Amazing. I love it. And is there any final thoughts that you have for our listeners today?
Don't forget to celebrate the wins, right? I see it very, very often with teams. Maybe they hadn't quite such a good quarter or such a good year that they wanted to have. But I'm pretty sure you did a bunch of things well along the way. Celebrate those. It just keeps everybody motivated and going.
Absolutely. Because the wins do snowball just as much as the losses do. And
I do.
it's so much easier to focus on the losses than the wins. So let's snowball
Right?
the
I don't know
wins
why that
instead.
is. It's like, seems like we like to punish ourselves more than celebrating ourselves.
What a great conversation with Andres. And as we close out all of our conversations here on the People Strategy podcast, we're going to look at what are the key insights? What action or people strategy can you implement to get a key business result? And my key insights from the conversation with Andres were first, business gets done by people and with people. What an amazing insight. So if business gets done by people and with people, how does that translate into a people strategy? So, what we know is that when we are working on a dream team, guess what? It makes that job so much easier because we are turning up the strengths of others and ourselves. Because you know what? There's things I am phenomenal about and doing. And so the things that I'm really great at doing, someone else is not. And the things someone else is really great at doing, I'm not. Let me give you an example. I was working with Morgan, who is on my team, and Morgan was talking about handling a really tricky situation. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so easy for me. I can totally do it. And then a couple minutes later, we were talking about creating a client journey for our people strategy roadmap to ensure that our clients have a phenomenal experience through our program. And I looked at Morgan and I said, give me a paper bag. I need to breathe into it because putting all this together, she's like, I love this stuff, Traci. And so that's really a great example around business gets done by people and with people. When we work together on a team where our strengths is someone else's weaknesses and someone else's strength is our weakness, what happens is we're really able to elevate together and we do business by people and with people. The result is we're much happier doing work because we're not turning ourselves into a pretzel. We're serving our clients and our customers at a much higher level, and work is so much more fun. So that is my first insight. Business gets done by people and with people. The people strategy is to create the teams that turn up each other's strengths, and the result is we serve at a higher level. The second insight that I had from my conversation with Andres was the distinction between solving a problem and what success really looks like. So that insight really brings in the people strategy, which is what does winning look like? When we can define what winning looks like from an organizational level, from a team level, and from a job level, what we're doing is we are cascading our goals up and down, and we're creating accountability within that. So when we can define what success looks like, winning looks like X revenue amount. Winning looks like 98% client retention. Winning looks like a 98% customer service 5-star rating. Whatever that is, if that's an organizational goal, what does your team need to do to reach that? And what do I need to do in my role to support that for the team? So, that insight, again, the distinction between solving a problem and what success looks like. When we can define what success looks like, I'm not getting in the weeds, I'm giving you an SOP of solving the problem. And so the people strategy is to set really clear goals that we know is a yes or no to that align between the person, the team, and the organization. The result is your entire team is aligned and we're winning as a team and we're elevating each other. The third insight that I had from my conversation with Andres was he talked about structure allows people to do their best work. So, this insight of we need to create a structure that really allows people to do their best work. And the people strategy around creating structure is really looking at how do we lead people the way they need to be led. And so, yep, there's going to be a structure to everything that we do. But when we're implementing those key things, some folks need to have a very specific standard operating procedure that they're following. And some folks need to know what that exact winning looks like and not the standard operating procedure. However, the structure of accountability, which in this case is the entrepreneurial operating system, which means we have transparency through everything that we're doing. That really allows us to get those results, meaning, hey, everyone's aligned on it. Everyone sees who's doing what, when, if they're on track or off track to get that. Guess what? We all know what winning looks like. So, our third insight for today was structure allows people to do their best work. The people strategy is to implement a system that both allows the transparency, the accountability, and the leadership for individuals the way they need to be led. And that result is increased performance based on the visibility into the organization and into what each person is doing within their work that's aligned. Thank you so much for listening today. I'd love to connect with you. If you'd like to connect, you can find me on LinkedIn at Traci, Traci Austin, and at our website at elevatedtalentconsulting.com. If you'd love to learn more about our process, please reach out to us. And again, thank you so much for listening and sharing your feedback with us through a review. Have a fantastic day.